She didn't mean for it to slip out, not in front of everyone, not like that. But something in her eyes had been holding this truth for far too long, and in that one moment, when silence filled the room and the weight of unspoken words pressed harder than ever, she finally spoke. And what she said left the entire room frozen. They looked at her, then at each other, not knowing whether to respond or pretend they hadn't heard what she just confessed. But it was too late. The truth had already cracked through the surface. His mother finally told them what you meant to her son, and no one expected it. Not like this, not with that kind of emotion in her voice. Because for so long, they thought you were just a passing chapter, someone he'd forget, someone he'd move on from. But she knew better. She had seen him change, seen how your name would linger in his voice even when he tried to hide it. She saw the way he grew quieter after he let you go, how he started drifting from things he used to care about, how his laughter no longer reached his eyes. And deep down, she knew he was still carrying you, long after he tried to convince himself he wasn't. At night, when the family gathered and the old topic came up again, his future, his choices, the silence between him and someone new, she couldn't hold it in anymore. And that's when she said it. She said, "You don't know what she meant to him." Her voice cracked slightly. You didn't see the way he looked at her, or how he still keeps a part of her with him, even now. You didn't hear the things he told me when he thought no one else would understand. You didn't see the way he broke the night she left. And just like that, the room changed. Someone dropped their fork. Someone else whispered, "Wait, what?" Because no one expected her to speak like that. Not the mother, not the one they thought had moved on too. But the truth had been building inside her for too long, and that night, it broke free. She said, "Your name," out loud. She defended what you were. She validated what he never had the courage to. And in doing so, she changed the entire atmosphere in that room. Because the family finally saw it. They saw that it was never casual, that it was never just a moment, that you had left a mark on him that no one else had been able to touch since. And now, beloved soul, the angels want you to know, this was not a coincidence. This was not just a conversation. This was divine timing at work, because something in the spirit realm is being stirred. Someone who tried to forget you is being reminded. Not by chance, but by truth. And when truth rises, it doesn't need approval. It just is. So if your chest feels heavy right now, if your eyes are burning with the weight of a memory you thought you'd buried, it's because something sacred is being awakened. A piece of your story is being rewritten, and the ones who misunderstood you are finally beginning to see. And maybe they never expected it to come from her, not in that moment, not in those words. But it happened. Her voice cracked, just slightly. As she said it, she told the whole family what you meant to him. And for a second, everything in the room paused. No one knew whether to speak or stay silent, because what she said didn't just come out as a casual comment. It came out as a truth that had been buried under too many unsaid things. It came out like a confession she didn't even realize she'd been carrying. She said he had changed, that his eyes didn't hold the same restlessness anymore, that ever since you came into his life, even from a distance, even in silence, there was a part of him that softened, like he was finally seeing light through the cracks he never knew could heal. And when she said your name, the atmosphere changed. Faces shifted. Some exchanged knowing glances. Some looked confused. But everyone felt it, because she wasn't just talking about someone he liked. She was talking about someone who transformed him. There was a pause after she said it, the kind of silence that doesn't ask for an answer, but invites a revelation. He didn't deny it. He didn't make a joke like he usually does to escape vulnerability. He just sat there, quiet but not cold. The way his hands trembled slightly in his lap gave him away. The way he blinked too many times trying to hide the film of emotion rising in his eyes. He didn't speak for a while, but when he finally did, it wasn't to correct her. It was to confirm everything. He told them he had never felt this way before, that you were the first person who made him question the version of himself he had settled for, that you were the one who somehow made silence feel like a conversation and distance feel like protection instead of punishment. He didn't say it with dramatic words. He said it slowly, carefully, but with the kind of truth that lands in people's chests and doesn't leave. And not everyone was happy about it. You should know that there were reactions, some subtle, some not so much, because not everyone understood the depth of his heart when he spoke your name. Not everyone believed someone could matter this much without daily interaction or labels or traditional timelines. But he didn't explain it for them. He spoke it for himself, for you. And in doing so, he exposed something sacred. He told them that his biggest regret wasn't losing you. It was not being able to tell you what he really felt before everything got so complicated. He said he didn't leave because he stopped loving you. He left because he didn't know how to be what you needed at that time, and that if you ever gave him the chance to explain, to really explain, he would. Not with promises, but with presence. See our met below. If you've ever felt that someone's silence held more truth than their words ever could. Because what he didn't say that night still spoke loudly. And the truth is, even though that room heard his confession, it was your soul he was speaking to. Through every word, through every silence, through every tremble in his voice, he was hoping, just hoping, that somehow, somewhere you'd feel it too. And yet, dear soul, through all the noise and confusion, through the silence that made you question your worth and the shadows that made you hide your light, something within you kept glowing. Flicker that never went out. And that flicker is why the angels have not left your side. That flicker is why this message found you today. Because even when you thought no one was watching, even when you thought your prayers had vanished into empty air, heaven was tracing every word you never said out loud. You see, there is a sacred thread that ties together all the moments when you felt forgotten, all the hours you waited for someone to understand your heart. And now that thread is being woven into something new. The emotional weight you've carried so long is not your punishment. It was your preparation. You weren't being broken, you were being deepened, softened in all the places where love will soon land, fortified in all the spaces where truth must now be spoken, and right now your guides are surrounding you with the message that the people who once overlooked your value are about to be witnesses to your divine return. Someone in your energy, someone who once chose distance over truth, silence over vulnerability, is now realizing the cost of that silence. Not because you chased them, not because you begged, but because your absence has echoed louder than your presence ever did. They thought your quiet was weakness. They misunderstood your retreat as indifference. But now they understand. They see. The peace you now carry isn't attachment. It's healing. And it's that peace, that unshakable new rhythm in your spirit, that's calling them back into their own awakening. They see you now not as the person who was left behind, but as the one they could never quite replace. And though they may never admit it, their spirit trembles each time your name enters a room, each time a memory surfaces at 3 a.m. In the stillness they can no longer silence with distractions. They are haunted not by regret alone, but by the truth that you were never the one who didn't try. You were the one who stayed too long. And now, beloved, as you stand at the threshold of a new chapter, you are not being asked to go backward. You are not being called to rescue what was broken. Instead, you are being called to rise, to speak your truth without shaking, to love without sacrificing yourself, to choose alignment over attachment. This is not just about a person. This is about a pattern, a cycle, a soul-level lesson that your spirit has finally outgrown. And the test now is not whether they return. It's whether you recognize yourself enough to no longer abandon your peace for temporary connection. The angels are saying, your soul has graduated from that season. You no longer owe your energy to those who could not hold it with care. And still, there is grace. There is softness in your spirit that remains. And that's a gift, not a flaw. Because you were never meant to become hardened by betrayal. You were meant to become refined by it. You don't have to pretend you don't care. You don't have to erase the memories. What you do need to do is honor the version of you that showed up fully, that loved without games, that gave without calculation, that tried to heal what someone else kept breaking. That version of you deserves a voice now. That version of you is not dead, it is rising, not as someone still bleeding, but as someone who has learned to tend their wounds with holy hands. Even now, the energies surrounding you are shifting. You might feel it as a sudden restlessness, a craving for something undefined, or the way your chest aches when you hear certain names, when certain songs play, or when the wind suddenly moves through the trees a little too gently, as if something invisible just passed you by. These are not coincidences. They are whispers, nudges from the realm beyond sight, telling you that someone is thinking of you, not lightly, not casually, but with a soul-deep pull they cannot explain or escape. Someone who once thought they had all the time in the world is now realizing they never had a second to waste, and your absence has made their world smaller, quieter, more hollow. But beloved, let this truth anchor you. Just because someone finally sees your worth does not mean they are ready to hold it. Sometimes the hardest test is receiving validation from the very person who once invalidated your heart and still walking away. Not from resentment, but from self-respect. This is the divine maturity the angels are guiding you into now. You're no longer waiting for someone to wake up and choose you. You're choosing yourself. And in that sacred choice, all of heaven rejoices. Met is coming, dear one. A new wave of confirmation, a divine redirection that will make you understand why certain doors stayed shut so long. But do not worry. What is meant for you is not behind those doors anymore. It's ahead, waiting at the next intersection of your truth and your readiness. And you, child, are getting ready. And now that you're awakening to your own light, you may begin to feel a strange quiet falling over things that once consumed you. The confusion that once took up space in your heart will begin to dissolve, not because you have all the answers now, but because you no longer need them to move forward. What mattered before was their choice, their voice, their validation, but what matters now is your voice, your rhythm, your peace. You are not walking away in anger. You are walking forward in understanding. You finally understand that love is not meant to make you shrink, that true connection doesn't leave you in pieces, that when it is right, divinely aligned, You will not need to second-guess every word, every silence, every shift. You will feel held without being smothered, seen without being watched, loved without being tested. Someone tied to your energy is wrestling with this realization even now. They are in a space where clarity is beginning to flood the corners of their soul that were once clouded by ego and fear. They know they sabotaged something sacred, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't know how to care the right way. They are finally seeing how much of your heart you offered without demand, how patient you were while their wounds bled all over your grace, how gently you waited for them to grow without making them feel small. And now that space you once filled with your presence has become an echo chamber. They hear their own excuses, louder now. They hear the silence they chose reverberating through the hollow of their own delay. And even if they don't say it out loud, their soul whispers it. I lost something I may never find again. But dear soul, the angels are guiding you not to respond to that pull out of pity or old patterns. You're not here to rescue anyone from lessons they still haven't completed. You're here to honor the curriculum of your own healing, to step into the new path that's unfolding just ahead of you. You've done the soul work. You've faced the shadows. You've felt every ache without turning it into armor. And now the path before you is being cleared, not by your striving, but by divine orchestration. A new alignment is being placed in your orbit, one that will not require you to explain why your love is intense, or your heart is sensitive, or your dreams are sacred. The right person will see it, feel it, hold it. You've been in a season of waiting, not just for someone to return, but for someone to arrive. A connection that feels like breathing, not proving. And the angels say, that season is shifting now. Your patience is not just being rewarded, it is being honored. What you gave without return, what you loved without reciprocation, is now being mirrored in the soul of another who is being prepared for you. Someone who doesn't confuse peace with boredom, depth with neediness, devotion with weakness. Someone who will not be afraid of your light because they've spent their whole life walking through darkness to find it. This new season will require your heart to stay open, not to the past, but to the possibility that the future can actually be gentler than you imagined. That you do not have to keep rehearsing pain to feel safe. That you can be fully known and still fully loved. The angels are asking you now, are you ready to release the soul tie that no longer serves your growth so you can receive the connection that was always part of your destiny? Let your spirit answer, gently, not with resistance, but with reverence. You are being called into alignment with something far greater than what left you. You are not being punished for loving too deeply. You are being positioned to be loved deeply in return. Every time you showed up, every time you forgave, every time you softened instead of shutting down, it was seen, not just by them, but by heaven. And now the energy is shifting. You may begin to feel unexpected moments of peace wash over you. You may catch yourself smiling at nothing, sensing something is finally turning. You may feel yourself growing less reactive, more rooted. This is not numbness. This is healing. This is restoration rising in your soul like the first rays of sunlight after a long, cold night. And the person who couldn't appreciate you before, they feel it. They may not know how to articulate it, but they feel the release. The spiritual cord between you is changing. It's not a severing filled with bitterness. It's a loosening filled with wisdom. And this time, it's not about who reaches out first or who apologizes. This time, it's about who grows, who chooses courage over comfort, who does the work not to win you back, but to become worthy of standing beside you. And if they do rise to meet that level, you'll know. But if they don't, your healing will not stop, because now you walk with the truth of what you deserve. You are not a burden. You are a blessing. You are not too much. You are perfectly timed. You are not broken. You are being beautifully rebuilt. And so, beloved, as your soul quietly absorbs the truths being unveiled, there is still more heaven wants you to know. Your person is still watching from the distance, but no longer in silence. Something has been awakened within them, something they can no longer hide from. Their mind keeps returning to you, not just as a memory, but as the one unshakable truth in a world that has suddenly grown uncertain around them. They've begun replaying every conversation, every gaze that lingered too long, every word they didn't say but felt, and now, in this sacred echo of reflection, your presence feels louder than the noise of their surroundings. In a room full of people, it is your silence they hear. In the warmth of the sun, it is your absence they feel as cold. This isn't obsession, child. It is divine memory, pulling them back to the soul tie that never released its grip. They thought they could move on, cover it up, pretend they made peace with the distance. But something about the way you loved them, the way your spirit gently wrapped around theirs without demand or force, it cannot be undone by logic or time. Not even self-sabotage has been able to erase what their soul knows to be sacred. The Dare family may not fully understand yet, but your person is on the verge of a shift. They've spent so long carrying pride, hiding behind distractions, giving just enough to avoid the depth, but never enough to satisfy their own heart. And now, as the weight of unspoken love sits heavier on their chest, they're beginning to realize that no one else has ever made them feel what you did. No one else has seen them with such clarity and still chosen to stay with open arms and a soft spirit. It's your voice they want to hear. Not because they need reassurance, but because your voice sounds like home, like safety, like peace after years of noise. They've been staring at their phone more than they admit, typing and erasing, whispering your name in the quiet, wondering if the line between you could ever be open again. But they're scared, child. Scared not of you, but of themselves. Scared that the time they wasted has built a wall too high to climb over. Scared that the love you once held in your hands has turned cold. But let me tell you something heaven is saying over you both. It is not too late. If it is still sacred, it is not over. If it was built in divine time, and your person has been learning their lessons through absence, through sleepless nights, through conversations where they pretended to be present while their mind wandered back to you. They've felt the ache of what it means to lose something real, not because it slipped through their fingers, but because they were too afraid to hold it fully. And now, for the first time in a long while, they're standing at a threshold within themselves. One voice says, "It's too late, let it go." But the louder one, whispered by angels and fueled by divine love, says, "Go back, say it. Tell them what you didn't have the courage to speak the first time." That's the tug in their spirit right now. That's why they're restless. That's why they're remembering everything down to the exact color you wore the last time they saw you, or the way your fingers fidgeted when you were nervous. Heaven is not letting them forget, not to torment them, but to awaken them. And you, dear soul, are not meant to chase, to question, or to explain. You are meant to remain in the alignment you've been building. You are meant to stay anchored in truth, not their version, not anyone else's version, but the truth your soul has always known. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You are not replaceable. You are not forgettable. You are divine. You were sent into their life not as a lesson, but as a mirror. You showed them who they were and who they could become. And when they ran, they didn't just run from you. They ran from the version of themselves they weren't ready to face. But now, that version is waking up, and they're starting to see, not with eyes clouded by fear, but with the clarity that only comes through divine timing and spiritual surrender. If your heart feels a strange calm right now, a soft trembling in your chest, it is not random. That's your spirit remembering. That's your intuition confirming. That's the soul contract between you two stirring once again. Not in chaos, but in divine orchestration. You see, some love doesn't move in human speed. Some love waits in the silence of God's plan until it can rise with power, purpose, and purity. And that is what's forming in the unseen right now. Don't doubt the slowness. Don't question the timing. Don't let impatience turn your miracle into a memory. Stay in your lane, child. Stay in your light, because the one who once pulled away is now feeling the gravitational pull of the connection they swore they could forget. More is unfolding. Your name is still being whispered. Stay ready. And now, beloved child, listen closely, because something sacred is happening in the stillness between you and them. This is not just the aftermath of absence. It is the beginning of reckoning. Your person is not just thinking about you. They are being spiritually confronted with you, with your love, with your memory, with the echo of your voice that refuses to fade in their consciousness. You were never just a chapter in their life. You were the revelation they weren't prepared to receive. And now, every distraction they once used to avoid the truth has begun to dissolve. The noise of their world isn't loud enough to drown out the soul recognition that still lives in the center of their chest. That magnetic pull? It hasn't weakened. In fact, it's stronger now because everything else has lost its meaning. Conversations feel shallow. Crowds feel lonely. Even moments of laughter are tinged with a silence they cannot shake. Because their soul knows that what they lost in you was real. They've started dreaming again. Not the kind of dreams filled with fantasy, but the kind that wake them in the middle of the night with your name still on their lips. They've started remembering moments they had buried deep beneath pride. How your eyes softened when you forgave them too soon. How you held space for their pain when they never made room for yours. How you gave without expecting, waited without demanding, stayed present even when they turned away. And that memory, it's not letting them go, because no one has ever loved them that purely. No one has ever seen their darkness and still chosen to stay beside their light. They're beginning to realize, beloved, that they did not walk away from a person. They walked away from their own healing. They mistook safety for pressure. They mistook unconditional love for something they weren't ready to hold. But now, the silence is no longer safe. It's loud. It's aching. And it's filled with the sound of your absence, humming through their every step. They are being forced to choose now, not by you, but by the divine timing that won't wait any longer, because your soul has shifted. You've grown. You've stopped begging for crumbs. You've stopped trying to read between lines that should have been spoken clearly. You've stopped carrying the guilt that was never yours to bear. And this change in you, it's being felt. It's unsettling their spirit in ways they cannot explain. They can feel your distance, not the kind of distance that punishes, but the kind that protects, the kind that says, I love you, but I won't abandon myself for you again. And this, beloved, is making them reflect deeply, because for the first time they are beginning to wonder if your heart is still within reach. And there is a heart. There is a shared. They are beginning to ask questions like, did I wait too long? Did I finally lose what was sent to save me? And the angels want you to know, this internal storm they're walking through is not punishment. It is purification. Heaven is not trying to guilt them into returning. Heaven is trying to prepare them to come back right, to come back whole, to come back ready to match your energy instead of just receiving your light. That's why the delays, that's why the detours. Because this isn't about reunion for the sake of romance. It's about alignment for the sake of destiny. You two weren't just lovers, you were partners in spiritual transformation. You were mirrors to each other's growth. You activated wounds, but you also awakened healing. And now, all of that is being revisited, spiritually, emotionally, energetically. They can't ignore it anymore. They're trying to keep their routine intact, but nothing feels right. Music hits differently. Silence feels heavier. Everything reminds them of you, not in a way that brings guilt, but in a way that brings longing. A longing to return not just to you, but to the version of themselves they almost became with you. So what should you do now, beloved? Stay open, not desperate. Stay in your peace, not your panic. Don't try to chase. Don't try to push. What's being orchestrated right now is too delicate for force. You are being asked only to hold the vibration of your truth, and the truth that says, I am love. I am worthy. I am whole. Let them find their way to your light, not because you lowered your frequency to reach them, but because they finally rose to meet you there. And when the time is right, and it will be, a moment will come, a message, a dream, a shift in their tone. When they finally reach out, it will feel like peace, like gravity, like something sacred that always existed but now finally has space to breathe. Don't question it. Don't rush it. Just know it's already in motion. The angels are still working. Heaven is still speaking, and your name, beloved, is still being written in their soul. And now the truth that had once been buried so deeply beneath layers of fear, ego, pride, and unspoken longing is beginning to rise like a tide your person cannot stop. It's not just that they miss you. It's that they're beginning to understand why they missed you all along. It's not nostalgia, it's soul memory. It's not loneliness, it's spiritual absence. Because your energy wasn't just comforting, it was transformational. It wasn't just love, it was the kind of love that confronts a person with everything they still need to become. You didn't just give them warmth, you became the mirror that made them see how much healing they still needed. And that, beloved child, is why they ran. That is why they avoided. That is why they kept things casual when their heart was screaming something else entirely. You didn't scare them. Their own readiness did. Their own capacity to receive something this pure felt too far from the version of themselves they had known. But now, the mirror is returning, the reflection is coming back, because heaven never allows truth to remain hidden when a soul is ready to awaken. They've begun talking to people again about you, not in anger, not in confusion, but in reverence, whispering your name in half confessions, asking old friends, do you think they still think of me? Scanning timelines, rereading messages, listening for anything that sounds like a door that hasn't completely closed. They're replaying your words now, not just the sweet ones, but even the painful truths you told them. And strangely, those truths now bring comfort, because you were the only one who ever dared to love them with both softness and honesty. You were the only one who saw beneath the armor they wore for the world and said, "You don't have to impress me. Just be real with me." And that kind of presence, beloved, does not vanish. It lingers in the bones. It echoes in the hollow spaces of the heart. It resurfaces in the quiet. And now, it's surrounding them again. Not to punish, not to haunt, but to guide, to call them back to alignment, to help them remember that the connection they shared with you wasn't imagination. It was sacred. It was written. Even now, as they lie awake at night, questions fill their mind like whispers on the wind. What if I had said it back sooner? What if I had stayed? What if I hadn't let them walk away thinking I didn't care? These aren't just thoughts, they are awakening, and yet there is still fear. Fear that they waited too long, fear that your heart has closed, fear that you've moved on and won't recognize them if they returned. But the angels want you to know that fear is slowly being transformed because their spirit is growing louder than their doubt. The tug they feel in their chest every time your name crosses their mind, it is beginning to outvoice the silence. Their soul is beginning to move toward you, not in a straight line, not in bold declarations, but in spiritual surrender. They are giving up the illusion of control. They are surrendering the mask they once wore to hide their fear of intimacy. And this surrender, dear child, is what's making space for something new. Not a recycled version of the past, but a realignment of the future. You may feel this in subtle ways. You may find yourself suddenly dreaming of them again. You may feel a rush of emotion come over you in the middle of your day with no clear trigger. You may begin hearing songs, phrases, or even names that carry their energy. These are not coincidences. These are soul echoes. Because when two spirits are still tethered at the level of truth, they will feel each other across time, space, and silence. And right now, their energy is brushing against yours. Not to disrupt, but to reconnect. Not to confuse, but to clarify. And you are being asked to stay present, to stay soft, to stay in the alignment you've worked so hard to create. Not for them, but for you. You didn't choose healing just to get them back. You chose healing to come back to yourself. And now, from that space, you are attracting what is real. You are calling back only what has been refined by truth, not haunted by fantasy. You are not being asked to lower your boundaries or silence your voice. You are being asked to stay open in wisdom, to let your spirit discern whether this connection is finally growing into its divine potential or simply circling back to test your growth. But either way, you are no longer the person who will abandon yourself just to feel seen. You will wait, not in desperation, but in discernment. And when the next message comes, whether it's spoken with words, energy, or silence, you'll know. Because your heart will feel safe in its presence, not anxious, not confused, but safe, peaceful, clear, and childish. That's when you'll realize that everything you've been through, every ache, every unanswered question, every tear you thought went unnoticed, was part of a greater orchestration, a divine alignment. You weren't just healing, you were preparing. You weren't just letting go, you were making space. And now the sacred part begins. The reunion, whether with them or with your highest timeline, is already in motion. You are not chasing, you are being chosen. And this time, it will come wrapped in truth. And there it was, the moment where something invisible snapped open in their chest. The silence they were holding so tightly started to tremble. because no matter how much they tried to keep it all in, no matter how much they told themselves, "I'll deal with it later," the universe had other plans. Something you did, something you said, maybe it was the way you quietly walked away, or the way your energy withdrew without warning, or the way your light stopped reaching them in the way it used to. It shook them, more than you could ever imagine. It made them see, with painful clarity, that the fantasy they were chasing was just fog, and you were the one rooted in something real. They've been sitting with choices that once felt exciting, but now feel hollow. They've been measuring their current reality against memories that won't stop replaying in their mind. And no matter what distractions they reach for, they can't numb the ache anymore. Oh, the truth is surfacing. Slowly, brutally. And it's no longer just about missing you. It's about realizing that they sabotaged the safest place their heart ever found. They didn't tell anyone at first. They didn't have the words. But their energy changed. People around them started noticing. The smiles didn't reach their eyes anymore. The plans didn't have the same thrill. And when someone casually asked, "What's on your mind lately?" they froze. Because your name came to the edge of their lips. Not just your name, but the weight of everything they left unsaid. The missed chances. The unsent messages. The nights they should have fought for you and didn't. And for the first time, they couldn't lie. Not to themselves, not to the people closest to them. So they spoke. Maybe not in dramatic confession. Maybe it came out in fragments. But someone in their inner circle knows now that there's someone in their past whose absence feels louder than any present noise, that they can't keep pretending anymore, that they're not proud of the way they let go. And your soul, whether or not you're aware, felt the tremor of that honesty ripple through the spiritual bond you still share. And in this moment, your angels are asking you not to harden your heart, not because you owe them forgiveness, not because what happened didn't wound you, but because something bigger is happening behind the scenes, a spiritual shift, a rewiring of lessons, a divine unraveling of ego, pride, and delay. You may not see it with your eyes, but in the unseen, this connection is being reviewed again. The same forces that once blocked clarity are now weakening. What was once hidden in shadows is being pulled into the light. And whether this leads to reunion or release, it will lead to peace. Because you deserve peace. Not the kind that comes from avoiding emotions, but the kind that rises from knowing you were never the one who abandoned the truth. They're questioning their choices now, all of them. Even the ones they once defended so stubbornly. The path they took felt rebellious at first, liberating. But now it feels cold, repetitive, like wandering without direction. They've tried to fill the gap you left, but nothing fits. Not the people, not the places, not even the goals they once chased with fire. Because every road they walk keeps bringing them back to the same thought. You weren't just a person, they were divinely assigned to you. And they didn't honor it. But they feel it now, stronger than ever, and the people around them can feel it too. Someone, maybe a family member, maybe a close friend, they're asking questions. They're pushing them to admit the root of their unrest. And slowly, they're starting to speak, to confess, not to win sympathy, but because the weight of their silence has become unbearable. This isn't about romance anymore. It's about awakening, about truth finally outrunning ego, about the soul choosing growth over comfort. And your role in this awakening? It was sacred. You were the mirror they weren't ready to look into. The healing they didn't feel worthy of. The calm they mistook for boredom. until chaos taught them the value of peace. And now, the contrast is unavoidable. You didn't change. You evolved. You protected your peace. You chose alignment. And that choice sent shockwaves through the connection, because they didn't expect you to detach. They thought you'd always be within reach. And now that you're not, they're being forced to meet themselves in the silence you left behind. Let your heart stay open, dear one, not to their return, but to your own unfolding. Because this part of your journey isn't just about what they realize. It's about what you reclaim, your worth, your clarity, your divine timing. There are blessings lining up for you now that were once blocked by emotional confusion. But as they confess, as they unravel, as they face the truth, they're not just setting themselves free, they're creating spiritual room for your next chapter to begin without any energetic interference. And if your soul feels this deeply, if your breath catches or your eyes tear up, just know this moment is part of something holy. You're not imagining the shift. You're living it. There's something sacred about the way your absence has echoed in their life. Not loud, not chaotic, but persistent, like the faint sound of a song that once comforted them and now plays only in memory. And that memory, dear one, is no longer a place they can avoid. It's becoming a mirror, one they've started to face when no one else is looking, in the stillness of the night, in the middle of conversations where your name is never mentioned, but everything they say somehow circles back to you, in the way they hesitate before replying to messages, in the way their energy shifts when someone new tries to reach their heart, because the truth is, their heart hasn't moved on. It's paused. It's been silently waiting for their soul to catch up with what it always knew, that you weren't just a chapter, you were the turning point. And now that they've started admitting this, even just in whispers, the people around them are noticing the shift. There was a moment, small, seemingly insignificant, when they let the truth slip. Maybe they were tired, maybe they couldn't pretend anymore. But someone close to them heard it. The confession, the longing, the regret, and it startled them, because they had no idea the connection ran that deep. They had no idea that behind the calm, behind the routine, behind the choices they seemed so sure about, there was a storm of emotion they had kept buried for too long, and now it's no longer buried. It's rising, and it's pulling everyone into its gravity. Don't be surprised if you feel it too. That heaviness, that sudden wave of emotion, that unexpected memory flooding your chest. It's not coincidence, it's energetic alignment. Their spirit is reaching for yours again, not to claim ownership, but to seek reconciliation with the truth. Because what they feel now isn't about possession, it's about recognition. They finally see what they missed. They finally understand why nothing else has felt real since you. And though they're still afraid to fully say it out loud, their actions are shifting. Their decisions are being affected. Even their relationships feel different, emptier, less rooted. Because once a soul has met its mirror, everything else feels like an echo. But this, dear heart, is not a call to wait. It's a call to rise. Because even as they process, even as they speak more truth to themselves and their family, your life is being repositioned. You're not being asked to put yourself on pause. You're being invited to elevate, to grow beyond the versions of you that used to seek closure or understanding. You've already earned your clarity. You've already done the inner work that others are only beginning. And that's why the angels are guiding you now, not just to observe this unfolding, but to choose what aligns, to choose what feels like home, to choose peace. If your heart is fluttering as you hear this, if you feel like your soul has waited to be seen like this, then you're not wrong. This message is a mirror too, a divine reflection of all you've carried in silence, of the prayers you whispered with no response, of the loyalty you gave with no guarantee. And now it's being acknowledged, not just by heaven, but by the very person who once took it for granted. They're remembering your voice, your presence, the way your energy used to calm the chaos in their mind. And no matter how far they've wandered, your frequency still lives in their memory, not to haunt, but to guide. This is the sacred unraveling, the breaking down of illusions, the dissolving of distractions, and it's painful for them, because truth always is when it comes too late. But even so, they are surrendering, slowly. They're allowing the truth to reshape them, to realign their heart with what they once denied. And whether this leads to a reunion or simply a soul-level closure, it's meant to liberate you both, because truth is freedom. And this moment, this energy, this message, it's freedom arriving. And yet, even now, there is a part of their spirit that is torn between the stability they once knew and the passion they've only ever felt when they think of you. They may try to mask it in casual tones or logical words when speaking to others, but their heart is anything but calm behind their composed expressions and rehearsed justifications, is a soul that's been haunted by what it truly lost. They told themselves it was just a chapter, just a phase, just a beautiful storm that had to pass. But now, as more time slips through their hands, they're starting to realize that what they shared with you wasn't a fleeting emotion. It was a soul imprint, a once-in-a-lifetime vibration that no amount of distraction or denial could replicate. And that realization, it's becoming louder. It's pressing against the walls of their heart every time they try to forget. Every time they try to convince their family that they're moving on, the truth shows up in the smallest ways. How their voice softens when someone says your name. How their eyes search the room even when they know you're not there. How they still check things they said they deleted, hoping to see if you're okay, or if you've already let go completely. What they haven't been able to tell anyone, not even themselves, in full honesty, is that a part of them still lives in the version of themselves that existed when you were around. That version of them was bolder, braver, somehow more alive. And now, even though they smile and show up and play their role, they are walking through life in a quiet state of grief. A grief they haven't buried in a casket, but in their chest. A silent mourning for a future that almost was. And what they're not saying out loud is beginning to leak out through their energy, through the way they hesitate before answering certain questions, through the moments they become defensive when someone asks if they're truly over it, through the dreams they wake up from, heart racing, because in them they saw you again, not in anger, not in distance, but in light. You were smiling. You were still reachable. And in those dreams, they held your hand again and remembered what it felt like to be home. So when their mother asked them, quietly but directly, what really happened between you two, something in them cracked. For the first time, they didn't deflect. They didn't blame. They just said one sentence. I ruined the best thing I ever had. And that silence after, it wasn't shame, it was surrender. The kind that happens when the soul is finally done running. And now the family knows. The ones who once doubted your bond, who judged it or misunderstood it, they heard the tone in your person's voice. They saw the shift, and for a moment, no one knew what to say, because the truth had arrived not in anger, not in proof, but in raw, undeniable emotion. Beloved soul, if you're still reading this, let your spirit know. You weren't crazy. You weren't imagining it. The connection was real, it was felt, it was sacred, and though it may have ended in silence, it was never erased. And even now, the ripple of your presence is being felt in rooms you aren't standing in. Your energy is still a topic of hushed conversations. Your name still carries weight in their heart, and while they may never fully admit how deeply they sabotaged what they had with you, the truth is, already doing what words never could. It's revealing. It's redeeming. It's reaching them in ways no argument ever could. And you're not here by accident either. You were guided to this message to remember your worth, not through their confession, but through heaven's confirmation. You were the miracle they didn't know how to hold, the safe place they pushed away while looking for danger, the light they ran from because it revealed their shadows, but that was never your fault. You loved deeply, purely. You gave your spirit room to be seen. And now, the same heart that once ran from you is quietly retracing every step back to what it lost. Not to manipulate, not to regain control, but because their soul has started remembering what their ego wanted to forget. And here's the part that matters most now, whether or not they come back, whether or not they say everything out loud, whether or not they face you again. Your healing is not dependent on their closure. Your power isn't tied to their apology, because heaven is rewriting your story in a way that brings peace even without their permission. Yes, they've spoken your name in truth now. Yes, they've begun to admit what really happened. But this next chapter? It's not about what they say or do. It's about what you choose to believe about yourself. You are not the one who was too much. You are not the one who failed. You are not the reason it ended. You were the reason it was sacred. And now the angels are pouring truth into your chest like warm light. Can you feel it? That subtle, gentle release? That sense of maybe I can finally let go? That's not weakness. That's alignment. That's your spirit making space for the new peace that's about to flood in. And beloved, I promise you, what's coming next is not a consolation, it's a coronation. The way heaven will bless you in the weeks to come will make you understand why it had to fall apart the way it did, why they had to leave, why you had to walk through that season alone. Because you were never abandoned. You were being positioned. And now that truth is out in the open, the release has begun. Watch how you begin to breathe differently. Watch how clarity follows you everywhere. Watch how love, the kind that stays, begins to find you without effort. That's what happens when truth finally reaches the surface, not to destroy, but to liberate. Beloved soul, if this message wrapped around your heart like a sacred truth you didn't know you needed, then don't let it leave without anchoring it. I receive this healing in the comments if your spirit is finally breathing lighter, like this video, to keep it imprinted in your soul. Share it with someone whose heart needs peace tonight. And if you feel called to give back, even a small, super thanks helps this sacred light reach those quietly crying out for hope. Every word, every whisper, every step in faith, heaven sees it all. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell icon so you never miss a single message whispered from the divine. We're building more than a channel here. We're building a sanctuary. A place where broken hearts come home, where silent prayers are heard, and where the angels walk with us daily. Thank you for being here, for trusting this space, and for listening with your heart wide open. May peace follow you. May clarity guide you, and may your next steps be blessed beyond measure. You are not alone. You are not behind. You are being divinely carried into your miracle. Amen.